fall had come, and the engines of the little railway were working hard. Leaves fell from the trees and coated the tracks, and it was up to the engines to clear them. Late one night, Peter Sam was out with one of these trains. It wasn't unusual for a maintenance train to be running at this time. It gave the crew the ease of not having to work around other trains. Peter Sam was the only engine running and enjoyed the solidarity. He hummed a tune as he puffed down the deserted line, basking in the cool night breeze. As he made his way onto the open cliffside, the wind suddenly picked up. It shrieked as it blew round his funnel, making him shiver. Then, through the darkness, he noticed a figure standing next to the tracks. "What's that man doing up there? He'll fall if he isn't careful." He focused his attention back onto the figure to call out to them, only to find them gone. "Driver! Driver, stop! Someone's fallen off the cliff!" Peter Sam's driver applied the brakes and brought the train to a stop. He stepped from the cab and stared into the darkness of the ravine below, where he could see there was no one at the bottom of the cliff. Confused, he explained the situation to Peter Sam, climbed back into the cab, and then continued onward. When Peter Sam arrived back at the shed, he found the others fast asleep. Still rather overwhelmed from earlier, he gave a blast of his whistle to wake them. "Gah! I say, what was that?" "That'd be Peter Sam blasting his whistle in the dead of the night and waking me up. What gives?" Whatever this is, it had better be damn urgent." Yes, sorry to wake you all. I was just, hoping you could help me understand what happened tonight." "Well, that depends on what happened now, Peter Sam." Peter Sam quickly explained what happened. "And when my driver looked for him, he was just, gone. Nowhere to be found." "A disappearing man? This is what you woke me at a ridiculous hour for. I've half a nerve to—" "That's quite enough, Duncan." Everyone looked over to Skarloey. It was unusual for the number one to snap like that, which meant whatever he had to say was of the utmost importance. "I didn't want to have to revisit this memory. It's quite unpleasant. But I'd hardly say I have a choice now." "Many years ago, in the earliest days of the railway, I was taking a late-night passenger train. Aboard my train, among others, was a man, the identity of which no one knows. The passengers that night said he looked very withdrawn and unhappy. They didn't think anything of it. Perhaps he just had a bad day, Well, whether or not that was the case, or there was something more, we'll never know, for as we were rounding the cliff face, without warning, the man leaped from the carriage and threw himself over the side of the cliff, plummeting to his death. Whether by accident or intentional, no one could deny it was a tragedy. But time never stops for anyone, and the railway moved on. To this day, it remains a mystery why the cliff jumper did what he did, but the local legend says that every year, around the anniversary of his death, he can be seen standing beside the track, briefly, before once more vanishing into the night. The engine said nothing as Skarloey finished his story. They just stared at him, feeling scared and intrigued. Finally, Duncan broke the silence. Pah! What a load of rubbish! For God's sake, Duncan, show some respect! A man's life was lost! And that's tragic, yeah, but the idea of his ghost lurking around, I mean, come on! He wanted out of this world, right? What sense would it make for him to stick around here then, eh? You haven't the slightest clue what the circumstances truly are, Duncan. There are things in this world we just can't understand, so I'd suggest you leave well enough alone. Huh. At any rate, thanks for the story, Skarloey. Definitely wasn't worth this green imbecile waking me up for. But it was all right enough, I suppose. Now, respectfully, shut up and let me sleep. The others were shocked at Duncan's callousness, especially Peter Sam, who still felt very uncomfortable. Skarloey, meanwhile, was silently hoping that Duncan would see sense before it was too late. Next day saw the little engines once again working hard. Duncan was to spend his day pulling slate to and from the quarry. All was going well, but Skarloey's story was still fresh in his mind. Despite his confidence the night before, Duncan had been deeply moved by the story. He quivered as the fierce wind whipped around the cliffside, sending shivers through his boiler. "Easy, boy," called his driver. "There's no need to ride roughly." "I'm no riding roughly, just a wee bit cold is all." But that wasn't all, and Duncan knew it. The mist had come down and made it difficult to see. As Duncan entered the quarry, he suddenly saw the shape of a man standing beside the line. Startled, Duncan shot forward, and right off the rails. "Blimey, you all right?" It had only been a workman. Duncan now felt very foolish indeed. It was getting late by the time the workman had re-railed Duncan. He still had a slate run to make, so he quietly waited for his trucks to be loaded, and then backed onto them and set off. The wind howled as Duncan neared the cliffs. "Just a wee tale, just a wee tale," Duncan told himself. Then, as Duncan rounded a bend, he saw him, the shadowy outline of a man, illuminated by the faint moonlight. He looked sadly at Duncan, who was trembling too badly to move. The man stared for what felt like an eternity. Then, with a tear rolling down his cheek, he said something that made Duncan's heart stop. I loved him. And then the man turned and leaped off the side of the cliff. Duncan was horrified. Duncan? Duncan? Is everything all right up there? Ghost! It's the ghost! Ghost? What ghost? The man. He was there. He jumped. What man? Duncan, there hasn't been anyone there. I think you need some rest. Perhaps you hit your head when you crashed earlier. Come on now, let's get you home. And Duncan set off again, wondering whether he'd really seen the man or if his mind had simply played a nasty trick on him. But we know, don't we?